Good evening, everyone. It's good to see some very familiar faces. And as I usually ask, is anyone new to Tara Institute? First time Monday nights? Very good. Well, welcome. And to those of you who've been before, welcome as well. So this is the third week of Introduction to Buddhism in 2023. So I'll start off with just the establishing a good motivation. So in Buddhism, the motivation is probably the main, if you like, energy point for an action that you perform. So if your motivation is very good, whatever energy you put into that action or activity will result in something positive for you and others. Likewise, if your motivation is not that good, maybe a bit lackadaisical, lackluster, and you put effort into it, you might find the result correspondingly isn't that good. And if your motivation is terrible, like a bad motivation, and you act and the result, not that, the result is what you wanted, the consequence of that for yourself and for others is not that good either. And we'll go through a few of these scenarios and a little bit later. But so for the time we're here, it's important to try and establish a very good motivation for being here. For the 1 hour we're here. So a good motivation is to wish for happiness for oneself. So that's a valid wish. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about that all beings want happiness and don't want suffering. And for him, that's the basis of human rights, if you like, that all beings deserve that. And to me, that's quite it's a very eye-opening thought. You think, well, all right, I'm here in the West. I can certainly put my hand up and say I deserve happiness. What about my brothers and sisters in other parts of the world, or even in Australia, who don't have such good circumstances? Are they deserving of happiness? And if you examine what His Holiness is saying, he's saying they all deserve happiness. So that's quite if you like, an expansive thought, but it's something we can pick up ourselves. So I thought this week I'd start off with the idea about the mind being the source of happiness for us and others, and also, if that's the case, is the mind also the source of unhappiness for ourselves and others? So it's a good thing to look at, because you go, oh well, sure, that's obvious, but maybe not. So because certainly here in the West we have enough physical resources. We've generally got a roof over our head, enough food to eat, generally good friends and family, so maybe a good job, good relationships. So all those things are pretty much taken care of. But is that sufficient for happiness? Just on its own, are the physical circumstance we have just enough to bring us satisfaction and happiness? So in Buddhism we'd say, well, it depends. So it's not a black and white in this case. So you'd say, well, if the mind that has those experiences is happy and satisfied, you'd say those conditions, those external conditions, are contributing in some way to that happiness. But if the mind that is experiencing all those good conditions is dissatisfied or upset or agitated, then all those external things don't mean very much. So in Buddhism we're mainly focusing on the mind. So we're trying to use an internal means to attain some form of happiness. And we do that in our tradition through spiritual practice. So in the spiritual practice, this includes something that we can all do, whether we call ourselves spiritual or not, and that is listening to the teachings. So that's with an open mind, a critical mind. So that's the first step to spiritual practice, is that. So, okay, I'm listening, I'm critically analysing. Okay, that's good. That's the first, and you're open to it. So if you're listening to someone, but you're like that, you're not going to take anything in because you're closed. But if you're open to what's being said, and you're still critical, that's good. So that's the first step. The second internal means is contemplating or thinking about the teachings. So that's the critical analysis. So we should never leave our critical faculties at the door and just blindly accept what someone said. So that's very important. So we should really critically examine any of the Buddhist teachings to see whether they make sense logically, and if they don't, you can set them aside. And we say, oh, you set those teachings aside if you don't understand them in equanimity. So you put them aside for another time. So you don't disparage them. Just say, okay, it doesn't make sense to me. I'll push that away, and I'll just focus on what I can understand and examine. And the third facet of spiritual practice is the practice of meditation. So with meditation, it takes many forms. So we have the classic breathing meditation. So that's generally for generating a level of calmness within oneself, peacefulness, and also strong focus, because you're focusing on the breathing, on the breath. So your actual mind, as it becomes calm and clear, it becomes a lot more pointed and focused. So that's very good, because that can be useful outside of meditation if you can tap into that sort of mind. So it's not someone else's mind that's experiencing that calm at that point, it's you. So we also have another type of meditation. It's called analytical meditation. So this is where you've relaxed your mind, it's calm and clear, and you're able to focus on a particular teaching or topic and examine it. So we'll do a little bit of that, both of those later. So those three things: listening to the teachings, thinking or contemplating about them, and meditating, they're called the three wisdom tools. So, as I've mentioned previously, they're sort of a chronological order. If you don't do the first one, you're probably not going to do the second part of it, and you definitely won't do the third. So you need to do those things in that sort of order, and then you'll find your spiritual practice is quite very effective. So in Buddhism, as the main focus is on the mind, we'd say that the sources of our problems are mainly internal. And the internal sources of our problems that we're talking about are the afflicted emotions. So last week we talked a little bit about the afflicted emotion of anger, but there are other afflicted emotions that are problematic for us. Would anyone like to mention a few? Ingrid? Jealousy. Pride, yep. Oh, I just said anger. Anger, yeah. So they're a good three to cover, huh? So you got anger, jealousy, pride. There's, if you like, excessive attachment, or like a full-blown attachment to something or someone, so that can cause problems for us. There are actually, in the Buddhist texts, I believe, 84,000 different afflicted emotions. So that's a bit too many, I think. But we can just, if you like, narrow it down to 3. So it's sort of attachment, and then you've got the afflicted emotions that sort of derive from that, and then you've got a sort of a hatred, and the afflicted emotions that we see are derived from that. And you could see anger is one of those. Things are going well, this is good, and then something makes you angry, and then a very explosive feeling of hatred towards whatever brings that anger on, whether it's a person or a thing. Do you have ignorance? Yeah, there you go, there's number 3. So that's ignorance of, and this is quite a subtle one, so this is ignorance of how things operate. Does a good action lead to a good result? That's one form of ignorance. So, and then the other form of ignorance, this is much more subtle, is how do things exist? How do things really exist? Do things really exist the way we perceive them to? So that's I think for another time. But with those 3, they encapsulate pretty much the 84,000 forms of afflicted emotion. So a good question to ask is, are these afflicted emotions all bad? And if they are all bad, or if they are bad, can they be removed? No? Anyone else? Yes? There you go, thank you. So it's a yes. So they can be removed with quite a lot of effort. So if we couldn't remove them, or couldn't modify any of the afflictions, if they were completely solid within us, if we couldn't even change them one iota, then we'd say, well, why would you go along to Introduction to Buddhism, or why would you do anything? Because you can't change it. You can't change that within you. And that also means that the problems you have now, you'll always have. But that's not the case, is it? Even with our own experience, even with the afflicted mind that I have, I can't say that problematic mind that I had today or this morning, it's still bubbling along now. And it'll be still the same tomorrow. It changes. So that's sort of one indication that perhaps it's not as solid and fixed. So in another way you could say, if we couldn't modify those afflicted emotions within us, if you were unhappy, the outcome would be you'd always be unhappy because you couldn't change anything. I was born with an unhappy mind. I've gone through life with an unhappy mind, and that's where I'll keep going. So, but that's not the case. So if you can use the meditation techniques, and we'll cover these a little bit later, to reduce or suppress or dampen or even sort of eliminate that afflicted emotion from you. If you can do it for one, and you get really good at it, you don't suffer from anger anymore, or jealousy, attachment. If those things that you've got them under control through your practice, if you can, by using logic, if you can do it for one, you should be able to do it for the whole 84,000. If you can do it for, because you've used the technique, if it works, then you can go, well, I'll use the next technique for this other afflicted emotion. So that's the human potential, if you like, that we can do that. So I've had pets. Who's had a pet dog? Or who's had a bright pet dog? Anyone? Really smart pet dog? Yep. Who's had a pet dog that's very cute and cuddly, affectionate, but not so bright? So I'm using that as a good example of the human potential allows us to examine, look into, critically analyse, and then meditate, and then come to an outcome and make some progress. Our pets, unfortunately, I'm just using dogs as an example, but they generally can't go beyond what they can do now. So they can keep you happy, they're loyal, affectionate, protectors, they're all those things, but you can't teach them to contemplate, meditate and make progress with those afflicted emotions. Maybe you can teach them how to be not so agitated or aggressive, but that not much more. So there's a limit to their capacity in that form. So nothing against the dogs. It's just more the human potential is much more. So that gives us a great opportunity. So in that way we could say, I have capacity to be happy. So that's an important consideration. And we should look at that ourselves, not just, Mark's saying that, we all have capacity to be happy, but could it be true? You have to look at that inside and go, well, is that possible that I could make a change that's actually going to make me happy? So the Dalai Lama, he said this, he said, unless you know that you are suffering, your desire to be free from suffering will not arise in the first place. So you have to do a little bit of examination to go, well, if everything's going swimmingly and I'm happy, then I don't need to do anything. So, but if I am still having some sort of mental, disquiet, uncomfortableness, then yeah, sure, I can do something about it. So you acknowledge it, and then you apply the methods or the antidotes. So this is a Buddhist analogy, so it's a good one. So effectively, we should look at the way the Buddha taught. Effectively, is a relationship between a doctor, the patient, and the medicine. So, in that example, we'd say that the doctor hears the Buddha. So. And why do we use the Buddha as the example? Because, again, with human potential, the Buddha is a good example of one being who, in a human form, achieved that state of happiness, permanent happiness. So he removed all those afflicted emotions, and then he achieved that state of happiness. So for us, he led the way because he said, oh, well, if I can do it, then you all can as well. You all have that potential. So we also have in this analogy the nurse is the spiritual community or assistants. So it's anyone who's perhaps teaching or leading a meditation or provides some sort of support. And the actual medicines are the teachings. So the teachings you listen to and contemplate on and meditate on. So that's the actual cure, isn't it? So I've used that analogy because that probably just ties into what His Holiness is saying, that you need to have some acknowledgement that things are not 100% right. Because if you were 100% healthy, going back to the other analogy, you wouldn't go to the doctor in the first place, would you? You just go, well, I don't need to go to the doctor, I'm well. So you have to have some things that, oh, it's okay, but it's not quite. I'm gonna go and find out what could be a cure for my illness. So in terms of anger, which we spoke about last week, so effectively it's that quick fire explosive emotion that arises, that it's characterised by the feeling of hatred, and it rises very quickly, and it's like a powder keg, and then it could explode, and then it could die down just as quickly, but it's characterised by that really quick bang of emotion, sort of a quick afflictive emotion that can cause you to do things that lead to untold harm in a very quick time, and then you have, oh man, what have I done? That regret, because you didn't even have time to think about it. The emotion of anger overtook you or me, and caused me to harm someone, for example. So, with my words or physically, well, so can happen very quickly. So there you go. So so in Buddhism, we do provide some methods. Some are easier than others, and some can be developed. But with those methods, they provide you with a method to either counteract the anger when it's occurring, which is quite difficult to do, as you could imagine, or train your mind so that anger doesn't arise as quickly within you. So instead of the powder keg, it's like, oh yeah, they said that to me, and oh yeah, okay, c'est la vie. And then the moment's gone, because the anger's flash, and then by the time you've acknowledged it, it might have passed. So it gives you a little bit of that space and time. So that's using some of the other Buddhist methods. And you have to examine for yourself whether that's valid. So when we go through some of these methods later, because you think about it for a person who has no antidote in their head about anger, about how to deal with it when it arises within them. And that is terrible, isn't it? Because they've got nothing. They've got no method to go to get sort of comfort or help them. Effectively, the anger propels whatever they do. They can't stop it or waylay it or sideline it. It just, whatever the anger says, it'll cause generally a terrible action and result. Yeah, so I covered some of these last week, but I'll just go over some of these methods, and then we'll do a little bit of meditation. We'll cover some of these. So here are a few of the classic methods to reduce or eliminate anger from arising within us. So the first one is to be like a piece of wood, so totally inert and unresponsive to others' anger. So this one's quite hard to do straight off the bat, because if someone's blasting away at you and you're getting more and more agitated, probably the most difficult thing would be to think, oh, piece of wood, or, sort of. So quite hard to do, but what I think what that analogy is really getting at is, forget the wood, but the mind of anger is not arising within you at that point, even if you're being blasted with criticism and so on. It's not coming. The anger is not coming up to that. Whatever that harm is, the anger is not arising. So that can be achieved. And the meditation helps you with that. So you need that wisdom tool of meditation to help with this method. The next method is when if you feel the anger arising, you can recall the disadvantages of anger and the advantages of patience. So this one, again at the time, can you perform the mental gymnastics to be having that discussion with yourself about the disadvantages of anger and the advantages of being more patient? So again, that's quite a difficult one to do, but if you do it in meditation, you can mimic that conversation, and then when it happens in real life, you can go, oh yeah, I'm not going to react with anger. So you might just have a moment of peace where, and then if anger passes, well, that technique has done its job. So that's quite effective too. The best antidote to anger, they say, is to have love, and that is the wish for others to be happy. So if someone's angry towards you, or you're angry towards someone else, is it easy to think about, I'm wishing you all happiness? Like, if you're consumed with anger yourself at the time, is the next thought going to be, oh, by the way, I'm wishing you all happiness. I'm wishing you love and happiness. So they almost seem contradictory, don't they? Because to me, because you're going, well, I've got this booming mind of anger, but the antidote is this thought of love towards that person. So again, that needs meditation, contemplation, listening, contemplation, and meditation, and then so this one could work in two ways. This one could actually, again, like the other method, stop the anger from arising. Or if it starts to arise, the recollection of that thought of beings being happy dampens that anger down. Another method, this one's very good. This one, we can focus on the true nature of anger. So this is quite hard to do if you're in the middle of it, because you're angry. So there's no, you're trying to do self-reflection while you're in that very agitated state. So again, this technique is complemented, if you like, if you can do it in meditation first, over a period of time, like familiarisation. So you get used to that technique. What is the nature of anger? Am I always angry? Is it always going to be staying with me? Or is there some time and space that can transform it or subsume it or eliminate it? So that's looking at that. What is the nature of anger? The next method, and this one, we can focus on the breath. So for the moments we can focus on the breath when there's anger, then anger cannot dominate us. And Geshe Doga talks about this method all the time. Someone's reacting to you with anger. You have to breathe. So you don't stop breathing, do you, when that interaction's occurring? But then if you switch your focus from the person who's angry at you to the breathing going in and out, or the breath, the anger can't dominate you because you've switched your attention. Because I think we find it hard to do two things at once. So if you're being dominated by someone who's angry, but you switch just for a few seconds to the breath, in and out. So as well as having a calming effect, just breathing, focusing on the breathing, it's a natural thing. The anger can't dominate you while your mind is focused on the breath. So that's a good one. So that one, I think anyone could do that if you learnt that. You wouldn't need to be doing a lot of analysis, perhaps, on that one. And the last method, I'll just briefly cover this one, is the anger permanent? And this goes to that idea about is that mental state of anger or attachment or jealousy, is it permanent within me? And what happens if we don't react with it? So that's a good one as well. So let's do a little bit of meditation. So this one will be like we've done previous weeks. So it's going to be a breathing meditation, a Buddhist classic breathing meditation. So and then we're going to do a little bit of analytical meditation on some of the methods to counteract anger. So so the most important thing is to have your back straight, and that can be in a chair or on a cushion. It's no problem. So make yourself comfortable, and so keeping your mouth closed, so you're breathing through your nose. And the focus of our meditation tonight is going to be initially on the breath. So keep your hands gently on your lap. So in our tradition, the left hand is under the right, and then you touch your thumbs and you point them back towards your navel. And then your eyes are not completely closed, not completely open. You just want to let the impression of light in. So you just breathe gently through the nostrils, and you imagine or visualise that as you're breathing out, all your anxieties and worries and concerns of the day are being removed. And as you're breathing in, let beautiful enlightened energy come into you. So now keep breathing, and then gently switch your focus through the nostrils, and try and keep your attention there on the sensation of the breath going in and the breath going out through your nostrils. So we'll do that for a few minutes. And if your concentration wavers, just gently and slowly bring your attention back to the breathing. while you're breathing and more relaxed and focused, so swing your focus to a situation or person who provoked anger to arise within you. So just to examine then the following questions when you have that person or situation in your mind's eye. So what are the disadvantages of reacting with anger for you? Next question is, what are the advantages of acting with patience in response to anger? And the last question you should pose to yourself is, does the anger stay with you with the same intensity? Okay, so gently bring your awareness back to the room and you can open your eyes. So that's a breathing meditation for focus, and then doing a form of analytical meditation. And a good question people ask is, which one should I do? Well, generally, if you can do the breathing meditation, you develop focus and concentration. Brings you some sort of calmness and clarity. And then the analytical meditation allows you to dive deeper into a topic. And because it's, I guess, a tried and true method, and you're the meditator, if you find it's too uncomfortable, too close to the bone, you can pull back to the breathing. You don't have to stay in an an uncomfortable state. If you find, no, it's too much, I can't do it, you pull back. So that's a classic Buddhist form of it, and there are people who do mindfulness meditation, and even in corporate world, we're doing mindfulness meditation. Why? Because the workers are more productive. So big corporations will run mindfulness meditation for their workers so they can be more productive. So it's not the best use of mindfulness in that case, but in the Buddhist technique, effectively we're using it for a purpose which is internal development to help you in the world. So it can be used for work, obviously. If you develop concentration, for example, you're able to focus on your tasks, which effectively you'll be able to go from start to finish and complete it, because distractions won't disturb you. If you develop very strong analysis, you're going to get a lot of clarity about what to do next, so some sort of wisdom will arise. So there's all good results that come out of these techniques, but they're not strictly just for work or productivity at work. But does anyone have any questions about any of those techniques? So, do they sound okay? Or yeah, because I guess that's the question you have to ask. So they sound okay to me, but I'm a bit biased. So, but it's the students who have to internally examine themselves. Yeah, you have a question?
The three tools, listen, is reading the same?
Yep. Yeah. So effectively you're using your faculties to absorb the Buddhist teachings, whether it's through listening to someone say them, or even in a conversation. So that's listening. And also, yeah, you could say that reading something, because a lot of people, they go, oh, I read a great quote from the Buddha or the Dalai Lama, and then they'll think, it's obviously struck a chord with them, then they'll think about what it means. So it'll touch them on a deeper level than just reading words. So definitely reading's good. So, and again, we all learn differently. So that's the other thing about listening, or styles of learning. Same with the meditation. Some people are visual, some people like the sound, some people like the feeling. That's how they develop. And same with the listening. It could be you're listening to a teacher, or you're reading a book and you're really getting into it, and it strikes a chord with you. So each person's is different. And in terms of what you read, you can, like in our tradition, effectively, where it's we follow the Dalai Lama's school, the Gelugpa school, the tradition. So that was started by Lama Tsongkhapa there, who's the middle statue. So he was a Tibetan Buddhist master from maybe 600 years ago. So effectively he started that school, and it's sort of effectively I think the term means the virtuous school, which is not to say that every other school of Buddhism isn't virtuous, but and their focus is effectively on monastic discipline and study and listening, contemplation, meditation. So the texts that have come down from that tradition are very good to read. So, but for here for this Monday night, we've got a text which I should give a plug for, because it's called Meditation for Modern Mind. So it's a collection of teachings by Monday night teachers. So if you want to look more into, and obviously different teachers, I'm in a few of the books, but there are other teachers too who are really good. So effectively they'll give their own take on introduction to Buddhism and how it can help you. So it's very good. So in terms of reading, and it's the same with meditation, it's good if you can do some rather than none. So to read something good and just even a page or a half page and then put it down and then come back to it another time, it's good. It's sort of a consistency. And same with the meditation. So if you can do some, it's much better than doing none. So it has to be enjoyable enough for you to come back to do. And then you'll find you'll get results. So yeah, so that listening is the first wisdom tool. So that's probably the most important one. If you have to do them in that, you have to you have to use that one. So because then you're invested. So because you're putting some effort into it yourself. Someone's not forcing you to do it. So it's your choice. That's very important. And then the contemplation, again, that's the great human brain that we have. We can think about something in a myriad ways and examine, pull back, look, re-look again. And then we could develop really good insight into it. So even the emotion of anger, that last point, does the anger stay with the same intensity? So I'll just use an anecdote from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. So he was saying in an interview, oh yes, I got angry with my attendant. So you think, oh, that's got to be a contradiction in terms, because you can't imagine His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, getting angry at anyone. But because he's so clear, he's quite a sharp person, if you like. So he said, I got angry with my attendant for something. Maybe the robes weren't folded properly, or the prayers weren't put in the right place, whatever it was. But then the next comment His Holiness made, and this is really good, is, but then I examined the anger. This is looking at the true nature of anger. So he examined the anger that was within him towards that attendant. And the more he probed, it came to nothing. It lost its intensity. So to me that was a really good... he used that example about getting angry in the first place, but then he said, well, the examination led to a very good result. You could see it was solid, but then when he looked at it, it virtually disappeared. So that's a good sign, I think. Probably a little bit of an example to us that we can do the same thing. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, very good. Well, we could finish a bit early, I think. So, okay, so at the beginning we generated very good motivation, and at the end, in the practice, we're going to dedicate whatever positive energy we've created, and we can generally do two types of dedication. So we go, I'm going to dedicate for my own happiness. So that's valid, because His Holiness, remember, he said, all beings want happiness and don't want suffering. So effectively, that's valid. So it's valid to dedicate for that, for your own happiness. That's very good. And you can also expand it. So you can expand it even if you're sitting here and you think, I can't do that. But then you can go, well, I can expand that in my head. I can go, well, I can say the words, and then I can actually try and push some meaning behind it and go, I can dedicate for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, and this is initially they say this type of mind is very contrived. It feels that doesn't seem right. That won't work. But then, with practice, that very contrived mind of wishing for others' happiness becomes more spontaneous, and then all your actions are imbued with that. that motivation and that dedication. So that's very good. So we can do that. So we can just sit, again, meditation. We can do our own dedication for the benefit of either ourselves or for all sentient beings. Okay, so thank you very much. So we have tea and biscuits in the coffee corner. If people would like to go there after the teachings, if you're most welcome to. Otherwise, I'll see you perhaps next week, next Monday. So thank you very much.